Okay. I have no idea what's going on. Aha, there you are. Hey, Chaz.
What's
All right.
up?
So I don't know how many people we got watching right now. I got 2 going on, and somebody just got on to the comments to talk about saying that he's been looking at Pratt. All right. So for those people that are watching, we got here Chaz, also known as Cosmic Gnostic Mormon. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Also known as by Jacob Morin, the most handsome Mormon this side of the Mississippi. Is that true?
Absolutely, man. I'm a
Jacob
big
Morin
fan. I'm aware for sure.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, I came across your videos from I first watched one of your Nietzschean videos, interpretations of the gospel and everything, and I converted in 2017, and it was kind of due to the influence of Jordan Peterson, and of course that introduced me to the whole world of Jung, and of course Nietzsche.
Mormons tend to love Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't even Mormon then, but it just happened that, so my grandparents were LDS. They gave me a Book of Mormon way back in the day, but long story short, I went through a big phase of kind of being Christian to being atheistic to, I was like, this Christian, what I'm getting from the Protestants doesn't make any sense to me. It seems immoral almost. And then I started studying every other thing I could. Start with Buddhism because I thought it was a secular religion that I could kind of get into and everything, and then started getting more and more into the Hermetics and Freemasonry and all these other perspectives that kind of have a golden thread of truth through them. And then I discovered Jordan Peterson, and I was like, this is interesting. Maybe I should read this old Book of Mormon that my grandparents gave to me, and through a symbolic lens, and see what was in Joseph Smith's subconscious.
Does Jordan Peterson ever talk about the Book of Mormon?
What's that?
Does Jordan Peterson ever talk about the Book of Mormon? Because as far as I know, I haven't heard of any like him talking about Mormonism in general.
No, he hasn't talked about the Book of Mormon, and he hasn't read it. But what he was describing was triggering my interest in just the symbolism of Christ again. So I was like, let's see what symbolism of Christ is going on in this Book of Mormon that's been sitting on my shelf for so long from my grandparents. And I flipped to the last chapter of the book, and I was like pretty stunned with what I saw, because I actually had the missionaries come over whenever I was first kind of going down my atheistic route, and they surprised me with some of their answers, but I had all the anti-Mormon stuff I'd saw on the internet and everything, and so there was no way I could hear what they were saying. But some of their, responses when it came to the hell dilemma and everything, I was like, oh wow, that actually seems a little bit more merciful and everything. But anyways, that stewed for a long time. Jordan Peterson reignited my interest in Christ. I just happened to pick up the Book of Mormon. The next day, there's two missionaries in 120-degree weather in Arizona, right by my old Christian private school that I used to go to. So I kind of took that as a sign. I said, let's pull over and give them a ride. They were going to go eat. And 2 months later, I was baptized. I started really looking into what this whole Mormonism thing was about, because I visited family members in Utah and saw all this infrastructure, these colleges. I'm like, maybe this isn't just so two-dimensional like I thought. Started looking at Mormon intellectuals. You get Hugh Nibley, and then of course I discovered Parley, Pratt, and Orson Pratt pretty early on in my searches. And when I read them, I was like, this is locked down. This is because I was so interested in Eastern and Western religion. I was like, this is the bridge I saw between all truth, right? And that was a fundamental principle of Mormonism. When I found that out, I'm like, all right, this can work. We can make something that is revolutionary for people. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. Is I'm so interested in the early church founders and everything, the energy that they had, the fire that they had. And Nietzsche seems to accuse Christianity of not really having that zest for life, that virility and everything, but it seemed to be present in the early church.
Yeah. That vitality is what you would refer to it as. They're not as creative or passionate, but then you really get that with early Mormonism that I feel like has been a little bit lost over time, where they were super experimental with like doctrines and stuff, and really trying some new ideas out that, like, some of their ideas didn't completely stick, but like a lot of them, especially with what the Pratt brothers talk about with their concept of God, really seems to be some really profound stuff that I think needs to be more looked into. So I wish we could bring back that energy into the church.
Oh yeah.
Like everyone's just sticking so close to the manuals.
Yeah, I mean,
go on.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're kind of getting emphasis a little bit more on personal revelation, but these guys were like, this is a vision I had. It's not doctrine, but check it out. And he's Parley P. Pratt is talking about the future, and he's observing the prairies, and he's seeing these gigantic civilizations in the Americas in the future of every race and color, and every piece of artwork is stunning and everything. And so it's like all these ideals that Nietzsche is describing is literally the heaven in Mormonism, in terms of like the ideals that he's prescribing, the emphasis on the body,
definitely
controlling the natural man, harnessing the power and knowledge that comes from, and the Pratt brothers, they take a very scientific approach, and that was very appealing to my skeptical mind. And I could talk to any atheist right now, and I could give them Mormon propositions, and they'll agree. But then as soon as I say that's what Mormons believe, they go, it's like, no way. You're like, do you believe in a simulation? And they're like, yeah, we probably live in a simulation.
That's where you sent me the
there's probably
video
a simulation.
With what was his name again? The atheist who's all about the simulation thing, and he talks about how Mormonism.
Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins.
Right, Sam Harris. I don't know why I was forgetting his name, where he was talking about how Mormonism could only be true if it was a simulation. And so that's a funny idea. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess we're living in a simulation then.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. So one of the first things I discovered whenever I was typing Mormon intellectuals is an organization called the Mormon Transhumanist Organization, right? What the heck is this? Transhumanism, you always hear bad, right? So I look into it, and yeah, Mormonism.
I've met with those guys, and they're pretty cool. They took me out to lunch and everything, and I've been to a couple of their things, so they seem like pretty nice people. The transhumanists. I need to get back over there because I haven't been with them in a long while, but maybe I want to try to get them on the show too and talk a little bit more about that, the transhumanist side of things. Because they saw my video on Space Odyssey, and they just kind of asked me out to lunch after that. And that's that's the one where I get a lot into Nietzsche and talk about the Übermensch and like the next evolution of the human species, and then compared it to like Joseph Smith talking about the King Follett sermon and becoming gods. And so I think Nietzsche, for me, especially his scientific approach to things, especially, is sort of a more grounded version of Mormonism. It's like, what if Joseph Smith was an atheist? Well, I think it would be something like Nietzsche. He espoused a lot of similar ideals to Joseph Smith. He grew up around Protestantism like Joseph Smith, and so he was very much like, I think God is dead with these people or something like that. Like he felt the effects of the apostasy. And so he wanted us to get back to
he's like everyone's wrong. Yeah.
Right, something like that. And so I often wonder what would have happened if Nietzsche actually met a Mormon, but in any case, I think especially when the transhumanists themselves talk about how they kind of went through a phase of apostasy themselves because they didn't know how to ground the church into reality until they came across transhumanism. And then they're like, oh, like it just clicked with them, and it made so much sense that
we've had so many previous we've had so many previous teachers in the church talk about like embracing technology and saying technology is part of God's plan for spreading the gospel and all these other things. We have the best websites, all these other things. So Mormons have always been really pro technology, but it just needs to be instituted in a way that frees up people's time so they could pursue that which is true, beautiful, and good. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
We have AI take over all the non-creative jobs, and we can just focus all on creativity,
Yeah, I mean, we're there. We have the technology, we have the resources. It's just the structures that are set up and the individuals that are placed in those structures. So that's in the middle of all my studies of all these religions, I'm like, this is pivotal. I studied anthropology in college. I'm like, we have to have some sort of cohesive narrative of where we came from, where we're going. And when I came across the Book of Mormon and the LDS perspective from an outside observer, just like I was an alien observing an anthropological culture, I was just observing. And I'm like, this stuff lines up, and it could, for some reason, it connects everywhere else. Like you wouldn't think that Mormonism connects to like all these different schools of thoughts and Egypt and all these other stuff, but it really does connect, and it's strange. So I know that just near the end of his life, Joseph Smith kind of had a lot of people from a lot of different cultures coming into his community and everything, and they were bringing their books and resources from all around the world. And he had a giant library there for a second in Nauvoo, and he was reviewing this stuff and receiving revelation, and then he's publishing these new teachings and everything. And I think that's the attitude that we have to have today. Again, everyone trying, like, really taking seriously, what does it mean to become godly? What are the principles required to become godly? What is the attitude that we still there? All right.
I think this is where we would go back to the Pratt brothers' idea of God, of being like just kind of this all-encompassing truth, that whenever we align ourselves with truth, we're aligning ourselves with God. And sort of like the more truth we attain, the more intelligence we get, the more we go up the evolution ladder, kind of an idea. And so And so I think, like Joseph Smith says, go for truth. May it come from where way it comes, and take it into yourself. And I think there's so much truths out there that aren't just inside the church that we need to go and bring inside the church. Like whether it's from secular atheism, there's some truths there. There's some truths in Buddhism and Hinduism and Shintoism that all go so well in harmony with our modern understanding of theology that we should be searching for them where they are.
Oh yeah, I mean the Book of Mormon teaches the same thing, that God speaks to all his children according to their understanding. And so with their cultural background and their mythologies that they developed, he's trying his best to convey these universal truths through the lens and ways that they could accept it. So yeah, I mean Joseph Smith, I mean, I don't know, have you ever heard of something called integrative philosophy? Like it's promulgated by like Ken Wilber?
Not too familiar with it, no.
Okay. So he's pretty much like a transcend and include kind of guy. He's like, everybody's right, but let's go further, and that's pretty much what Joseph Smith is saying. He's saying, bring whatever religion you have and we'll add on to it. We're not going to tell you to get rid of the truth that you already have. And so I'm called Cosmic Gnostic Mormon because I really do believe that Mormons are Gnostics in the sense not of like the demiurge and all these other concepts, but in the sense that your salvation is based off of your knowledge and your perseverance in embodying that knowledge of truth, because truth is reality, and having faith in the truth once it's revealed to you. And when you have that faith, you kind of it's referred to into the rest of the Lord. You enter into the rest of the Lord. And so that's very similar to samadhi in Hinduism, these states where there's no separation between you and the truth. There's no, the line between the yin and yang that separated it also unites it. And once you come to that understanding that, everything is relationship in the universe, and everything's codependent on each other. And that's why Joseph Smith taught that, we're co-eternal with God, is because there's one, pretty much what the Pratt brothers teach is that there's one ocean of intelligent matter. This intelligent matter comes in formations like whirlpools pretty much. And very similar to Buddhism, it's like these whirlpools are temporary unless these actions are taken, and you pretty much need to develop a spiritual body and fill your spiritual reservoirs with this fire electricity. It's very close to the concept of chi. Like if you listen in prana, if you read the Pratt brothers, they talk about laying on the hands, and spiritual energy is transferred like pouring water from one vessel to the other. And that's how spiritual healings are transferred. That's how calmness is transferred and everything. And so you're supposed to maintain a state of holiness. So whenever you're called upon, you could pour that spiritual energy that you've woven over time through your state of knowledge and charity and all these other things that we're told to have. And so it's really quite interesting because it's like we had the Latter-day Saint leaders come out and say like we need to like avoid energy healings and all this other stuff. But I mean, like the Pratt brothers are pretty much saying whenever you lay hands on another person, you're pretty much performing an energy healing. It's just a spiritual matter that's more refined, like we read about in the Doctrine and Covenants.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I don't know why, but for some reason, like I'm thinking with all this talk of like spiritual nature, energy, and all that, like I had something that they probably, I don't know if the church is against, like tarot card readings or whatever. I haven't read anything about that, but I actually had a tarot card reading and I thought it was actually pretty cool. I wasn't sure if it was like how legit it is, but there seemed to be like some things that were like pretty on point, and it's almost like, man, this is almost like another way of getting a patriarchal blessing in a way, but it's with cards. And so I wonder if there could be some like maybe there.
No.
Oh no, we lost Chaz. You there?
Hang on back. My internet's doing strange stuff.
Right. Okay.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right,
We got
we're good now. Yeah, no, I have a tarot deck. I haven't used it, but I've looked at all the symbols and I've analyzed them. And I mean, we shouldn't have anything to be afraid of. You know, if you have the truth, there's nothing to be afraid of. And I mean, with the tarot stuff, it's interesting. Just be an observer, see what truths that they hold and everything. But no, like divinization. I mean, if Joseph Smith looked into a seer stone to translate the Book of Mormon, I mean, that's pretty, you know, what would you call magic-y sounding?
wild,
Yeah.
wild. You know, it's very magic. You know, he was accused of using black magic, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm a strong believer that Joseph Smith was a white magician, you know, for sure. And so that comes to, so you start getting into Hermetics and Freemasonry and the real basis of that. It's really about like there's a real strong association with the proper use of your creative energy that's within males and females, and not to waste that and all these other things. And so if you waste it, that creative energy that's within you by being deviant and all these other things, then you're a black magician. If you like are using your knowledge to manipulate society in a way that's not is adding to entropy rather than adding to further order, then you're a black magician. And Joseph Smith was definitely a white magician. I think there was a reason why he dressed up in his white suits and everything. And that's the other thing. I love Joseph Smith. I really identify with him because he's a fool for Christ, or he's in the Buddhist schools they would say he's crazy wise. He's crazy wise because he had a sense of humor to his teachings and stuff. You know, he used to put on disguises and go out into the community and interact with them and kind of poke at them and see how they'd react and see what the state of things were. People would come up or like, "Are you really a prophet?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I am. Do you want to wrestle?" You know, like stuff like that. What was something else that he would do? All kinds of crazy stuff. Oh, after he revealed the word of wisdom, he got on. Go ahead.
Wasn't it like
after you,
like, are you actually really a prophet? Because you're not acting like a prophet. Because they're thinking, but instead they get this like cheerful, humble farm boy who's like, you know, playing around with kids and wrestling random people on the street, and so it's
he was all about subverting expectations, and I think we need to get back to that. We were very not antagonistic, but we're like, hey, think about this. I was talking to some Islamic friends about what Mormons believe, and that's a whole nother interesting topic, like how they also believe in the pre-existence and all this stuff. I wasn't aware that they believed in the pre-existence.
Oh, they do? Mormons. I didn't know
that. Yeah. And so not exactly as detailed as we do, but they say that they existed before they were conceived. And they actually have a date whenever they say the spirit enters the embryo. So it's like abortion is okay previous to that date. I did not know that. I thought they would be more strict on that than the Christian world. But anyways, I was describing what Mormons believe, and I was in a group with some other friends, and we were all just speculating and stuff. And they were like, I feel like Mormonism is just a bunch of guys who got around in a circle and say, what if God is like this? And they take another puff. I thought that was funny. I think we need to get back to that because that's what Joseph Smith taught, is by proving contraries, truth is revealed. Yeah, bring back the weed. No, that's another conversation if the wine was correct.
I don't know if they were doing weed, but they were definitely smoking something in the top floor of that house because Emma did not like it at all.
They were buzzing on that tobacco, maybe a little peyote or something. Who knows? But that's a whole other topic. Well, and so that's the thing. You hear these visions that these people have, and it's this electric fire that comes whenever they are by themselves and they're deep in prayerful contemplation. There's one description whenever they're in the school of the prophets, and Joseph Smith is instructing them for how to receive their second comforter and then to see the Father himself, supposedly. And there's like, I felt a fire, ever-consuming fire, and it was going to melt the marrow of my bones, and my skin became, and to others, my skin became transparent like amber, and my blood was removed from my body. And now, after that I was in this state, Joseph said, now you're ready to receive the Father. And it's like, what is this? So like, we're very anti-mysticism, but like what they're describing, these sensations, they seem to be kind of universal. This consuming fire and everything, and it seems to be required for you to get past your ego, to burn it off literally through this sensation. And that's where the whole Gnosticism comes in, because like Joseph Smith also taught, if you could look into heaven for 5 minutes, you'd learn more on the subject than if you were to read all the books in the whole world from Adam, right? And so it's through direct experience. That's what separates Mormons, is they say you need to experience it yourself. Instead, everyone else is like, you just need to have faith. It's like, no, you need to have conscious faith that's based off of experimental experience, and to see what works and what didn't work, what inspired you to do better and what didn't. And that's the cool thing about Mormonism, is it is so flexible. It just has some basic parameters, but there's a lot of flexibility within those. As long as you hold these self-evident things to be true, everything else is a question mark. And that's exciting when it comes to people like me that are so curious, and Mormonism is just a treasure trove of information and possibilities. And Parley P. Pratt and Orson Pratt, they seem to have the most logically consistent view. I mean, shoot, I even considered Adam God as interesting esoteric doctrine, if you take it from the perspective of like all of reality is a dream, and God the Father entered into his dream and put a veil of wakefulness over himself as Adam. And, you know, all of his descendants are Adam himself waking up to his true nature. And so that's where the unified field of consciousness comes in. You can't have an environment without a subject. So there had to be at least one subject in the beginning for there to be two. There had to be one for there to be two, and for there to be three and four. And so the Father is the first intelligent subject that became self-aware that there's a separation between object and person. And so then he started working with that object, aka intelligent matter. And so, because he got bored, I'm guessing he got bored. If I was God and I was by myself, I want something going on. I would want some sort of game. Right. And apparently he came to this state by abiding by certain rules that were already pre-existent with him and us. But he was the first to, I picture like a sheep. Like he's the first one to start ascending and start growing in complexity. And then he's like, that was a pretty interesting experience, and it's pretty enjoyable, but there's no one to share it with. And so like, that's why he created humanity. Man is so that they may have joy, right? And joy is only possible if there's a game to play. And so God is doing that, which perpetuates the game into eternity.
So this definitely sounds like it's going back to what the Pratt brothers refer to as like the great first God, or like he first became conscious of himself, and then he became lonely, so he created other beings like himself. Is that where you're getting at?
Yep.
And like, yeah. So he's spreading out his truth kind of with everybody else.
Yeah, let me read something from Parley P. Pratt. They're on the fields, and they're discussing, and they're trying to discuss how this could have happened. If I could find it, but anyways, I can't find it right this second. But he's talking about the first.
One of the things you sent to me.
The first particle. No, it wasn't. It's talking about the first intelligent particle came into formation, and then he sought to expand. And so that's interesting with Mormonism. Eternity is now, always. You know, it's very Buddhist, because it's like there's no separate realm of eternity. Eternity is here now, and the earth is going to be heaven. And it's like, don't worry about it's taking responsibility. It's bringing it back to where we are right now, the ground beneath our feet. And that's another topic I want to talk to you about. I'm very excited to talk to you about all this stuff, because I feel like you understand what I'm saying. But I went to school for environmental studies and environmental sustainability, and I got like 40 fruit trees in my backyard. And so like, I think that aspect of refinement of the saints need to come back, like the agricultural mindset that used to be around and the working with nature. And it's literally a walled garden. So you might have seen the Japan or Jordan Peterson presentation where he's talking about paradise literally meaning walled garden, and Eden meaning well-watered place. So it's a perfect balance between culture and nature. And so that's where the earth is going to be celestialized in the end age. Like, I think learning how to be conserve and be stewards and exalt our environment and agriculturally and architecturally is key for us to stand out. And we do that already architecturally, but I think we're lacking when it comes to the agricultural side of things. Because like I think we should be the tree religion, the family religion, honestly. Like, we're compared to trees so often in the scriptures and the teachings from Joseph Smith, and like supposedly from that one letter whenever he talks about the eternal regress and the trees never not came from a tree and all this other stuff. I think there's a lot to be had with the temples. Like, the temples are inspiring just looking at them. You don't have to believe anything about it, but they're inspiring. And I think there's a lot of lack. We used to have like orange groves here in Mesa around our temples, and people would come and pick oranges. I think we're really missing the mark when it comes to the utilization of our landscapes. I think we should be putting missionaries on the grounds of the temples, maintaining these gardens that we should be growing. And because it's literally part of what our mission statement is, like the celestialization of the earth. It's like nice to have some pretty looking stuff, but let's produce some food for the community. You know, let's actually make these places of worship and culture be something other than something nice to look at. Let's get them participating more. I think because that's kind of how the attitude was in the Kirtland Temple. Is like there was a space where everyone could enter. It didn't matter about their denomination. We should have libraries in the front lobby of the temples, you know, for everybody to read the works of early church leaders and everything up to today. Like, I think this stuff's common sense, and I think there's a lot of Mormonism should be the most popular religion in the world. It really should. It's fascinating as hell. It's fun. It's got the energy that's missing from so much other Christianity. Like you were saying, like if Joseph Smith was an atheist, he'd kind of agree with Nietzschean philosophy so much. Like he's even like considered that possibility. He's like, if the saints go to hell, we'll turn it into a heaven anyways. And that's the type of like, there's no stopping us.
Like, you know, right there. That's Amor Fati right
what's
there.
That?
Amor Fati, it's Latin for love of fate. It's a philosophy that Nietzsche espouses as sort of like the ultimate culmination of being an Ubermensch, where you accept whatever happens to you, you love it, and you make a heaven. You know, you make lemonade out of lemons, kind of an idea. And so it's like
yeah, and that's another topic I want to talk to you about, because like we hear in the early church leaders like creating a race of saviors. Like that is a really cool title to have. Like, what are you trying to accomplish with the Mormon church? We're trying to create a people, like a whole church of saviors. Like, all right, that's good, because everyone else puts Christ on a pedestal and says we're never going to be like him, and we shouldn't strive to be like him, strong and regal and stoic. We're not perfect, so we're not going to be that way. So we'll go out and party and we'll, you know, repent of it tomorrow. Where with Mormonism, they kind of put their money where their mouth is. Not so much anymore compared to like how invested they were back in the day. But I think we could recapture that if we give some really compelling ideas, again, like you're doing with your channel, to the people to say like, I have nothing to lose. You know, this is actually the best thing I've come across whenever it comes to just comprehensive, like, all right, this is inspiring overall. Like, there's nothing better than the Mormon message of we're all one big family on this earth. We're loved, and our goal is to become of one mind and one heart. And once that happens, we'll live in peace for eternity. It's like, all right, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I can't really argue with that.
Definitely. And so I think going back to the whole idea of heaven on earth, I think that's definitely something that Nietzsche would go for, because he talks about the Hinterwelt, or like this imaginary other world that people use to escape from their daily lives. He usually compares it to heaven. But talking about heaven on earth, it definitely puts more responsibility on your shoulders instead of just, you know, I guess as the song goes, dreaming of your mansion above, kind of an idea where you actually sit down and you think, how can I take this metaphysical concept of heaven that we have as Mormons and bring it down to our level and make it real instead of looking forward to some imaginary hereafter. And so I
Yeah.
think we need to go back to like I like your idea of like having the temple be like this place where you can go and pick fruit and you can go inside and read some good knowledgeable books that are just kind of as a section for everybody to go in and take a look at. I think that's a really great idea. You need to, message the leaders about that.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. Is there for a while, whenever some stuff was going on, I was investigating Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy. You know anything about them?
Kind of. I hear there's like a lot of similarities between Mormonism and Eastern Orthodox churches, but I haven't gotten super into it yet.
Yeah, so Jordan Peterson, the primary like place where he gets a lot of his symbolic interpretations of Christ and biblical stories is from like Orthodox church fathers and everything. So therefore, I'd kind of been reading the church fathers in parallel while I was already converted to Mormonism and everything, and I was making these connections. Like you said, there's a lot of similarities. Um, and so there for a second, I was like, well, maybe I need to consider this Orthodox thing more seriously. Maybe because it's either two in my book. I don't think Catholics are right. I don't think it's between Mormons and Catholics. I think it's between Mormons and the Orthodox in terms of like who, if Christ is real and he has a message and a plan for the earth.
I mean, it definitely can't be any of the Protestants because they're just so off the mark.
Right. Well, if Catholicism's wrong, then all the Protestants are wrong too, right?
Yeah, that's how the saying goes because the Protestants went out from the Catholics. But you think the Orthodox would be more true than the Catholics?
So the Catholics and the Orthodox were one church, and then early on, the Orthodox and the Catholics split. The Orthodox stayed. The
You'd
Catholics
say
got
the
their
Catholics
pope,
are
got
the
their pope,
Protestants
and their,
Orthodox, or what?
what's
Are the
that?
Catholics the Protestants to the Orthodox?
Yeah, kind of. They say they're the true church, and one day they'll be united again, and they'll give up the pope power and all that other stuff. But they definitely like Catholics more than Protestants. They hate Mormons. I went to the Orthodox place, and they would talk about Mormons and what they believe like every other talk because they see it as a threat. Because it really is. It's either the Orthodox or the Mormon when it comes to the Christian religion. And so I went there, and I get invited to go to a monastery. And you go to this monastery, and it's a very holy place. And I'm not an Orthodox member, but I'm able to go this far. There was a line in the sanctuary where I could go this far, at least whenever Vespers were going on. But if Vespers weren't going on, then I could walk anywhere within the place, right? But anyways, you go and you see this church, and they have all these exterior buildings, but it's all surrounded by productive fruit, and it's very beautiful, serene. You have that connection. You're in a literal garden. They have goats. So they have all these other things. I mean, we got the money. I think that, and you could make a profit from it. Provo City Temple goat milk. Like you could sell that on the shelf if you wanted to. But at least you're teaching missionaries useful skills.
It definitely seems the
What's
church
that?
has all the money in the world to do that.
Yeah, and they're already highly involved in agriculture. Like there's the single largest entity, like landowner entity in America is the Latter-day Saint Church. So it's like we could grow all the food for all the animals we need and all this other stuff. Like even more than Bill Gates. The LDS Church owns more land in the United States than Bill Gates.
Wow. All right. Bill Gates has competition.
Yep. Yeah. So no, I think you're right. Like we need to revive. I had an Instagram page. I didn't really encourage it too much, but I named it Make Mormon Men Masculine Again. And so I think there was something about those early days of fires.
Something that's going around right now. Like there's a lot of people talking about that.
Masculine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's kind of an attitude within the church right now is like, oh, I'm just an ugly sap, and I'm so lucky that my wife was willing to marry me or whatever. It's like they wouldn't say that. I mean, they kind of went overboard, Brigham Young and all these other guys, whenever they came to like marital bragging and stuff. But they wouldn't.
I mean, they were chads.
So pride.
They were chads taking on multiple wives back then.
Yeah. No, they were kind of chads in the technical sense of the internet right now, for sure. But pride is a sin, right? Or is it? Is there different kinds of prides? And so that like that's part of Nietzschean philosophy is, you know, like taking pride for your ancestors and everything. But then again, we are like the ancestral religion. And if then again, if our ancestor is literally Adam, or if you go beyond, if you don't believe Adam, it's like it's if you go down the roots of the tree far enough, you'll find the Father. And so we literally worship one of our ancestors, if you want to get in the technical sense. And so it's like Mormons
Whoever
are
that first ape was to become self-conscious of itself.
the first self-aware Homo sapien, potentially. Hugh Nibley seemed to believe that Homo sapiens are almost required. It's like the base unit for divinity is you have to have thumbs and fingers. Apparently, I don't know, no tentacles allowed. I leave room open for that. But yeah, the first self-aware entity that was able to decipher good from evil because he understood what suffering was. That's what Jordan Peterson extrapolates: is you can only know good from evil if you have self-limitation and can experience death. And once you know what pain and death is, you can understand what is just and unjust, and what is necessary suffering and unnecessary suffering.
Right. That's the story of the Garden of Eden, of Adam and Eve. They're in the garden, they're naked, and then they eat, and suddenly they eat of the fruit, and suddenly they're conscious of bitter and sweet, and that means there's good and evil. And now they know they're naked, so they got to cover themselves and go out into the world and be productive and work and have agriculture and all that.
So
yeah,
I have
definitely some truth to that.
I have opinions already, but I'm curious to hear what you would have to say. Why do you think the Book of Mormon teaches that Adam fell so that men might be? What do you think that means?
I always think back to Batman Begins, where they say, "Why do we fall? It's so we can learn to pick ourselves back up again." I think that's exactly what the fall of Adam was. It was sort of like it's a fall from unconsciousness to consciousness. Sure, it's a fall from paradise where everything is cheerful and happy, and you think you're just gonna live forever, and you're in this childlike, innocent state where you don't care if you're naked, and as far as you're concerned, you're going to live forever, except for those old people. They're definitely going to die. Only old people die, according to little children. But then you realize that you are going to get old too. You are also going to die, and once you start to experience more pain and more suffering, like around the age of 8 or 9, you start thinking more about death. And next thing you know, you've fallen from paradise, and you realize that life isn't as all that it's cracked up to be. And so you go through a period of feeling like you fell, like you feel a little bit disappointed, I guess, by reality, but then you learn to pick yourself back up again.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. Yeah, we got to have struggle, because without struggle, there's no capacity for learning. Because there's nothing to learn if you're just floating in a soup of infinite nothingness, you know. So you have to have that rock to push up the hill. You got to have that purpose, and that's the cool thing about Mormonism. Yeah. So in Mormonism, you're always working, you're always adventuring, you're always going to new celestial spheres. You're going down to fallen worlds to save them. You're going up to higher worlds to socialize with the gods. It's like this is an ever expansive. Because you ask most Christians, "What's heaven like?" It's like, "Oh, it's just love and bliss." And it's like, "Well, what are you doing?" And it's like, "Are you floating around on a harp, or what are you doing?" And they don't really have an answer.
Okay, you're happy now. What? Oh, we just praise and worship God all day and night, you know. But I agree with Nietzsche, where he's like, I can't worship a God who wants to be praised all the time. And I think, it kind of would be just like if God created us just to be like, "You're so amazing" all the time. That just I feel like even if I was God, I'd feel like, okay, yeah. Go do your own thing already.
Oh yeah, I mean, and because the Father is placed within. Well, because the Father is placed within the universe in Mormon cosmology, it's in the laws of the universe where arose mutually. If you want, I know there's no time in eternity, but like the Father and the laws always coexisted, right? He didn't will those laws into existence like most Christian view, and he's outside of time space, and he's pretty much say, do this or I'm going to torture you. Where our Father, he's in the universe, he's attained this state where you can help others attain more joy. And he's, instead of saying do it like most of Christianity does, he says let's go do it. And I think that's a whole different shift in perspective. Let me pull you up to my level, to my plateau, and you stand next to me shoulder to shoulder as we look into the great beyond of truth, instead of I am the great passionless truth and I'm separate from you, but I still love you, even though I don't know what love is. But then they experience limitation through Christ, apparently. And I'm like, well, why is there two persons if only one has to experience limitation? I don't know. You get into that whole thing. But yeah, it's more of camaraderie with God. It's like he's literally my friend. He's my teacher. He's my master. And that one quote from Orson Pratt I sent you, where he says, we don't worship the tabernacle of the Father. We worship the truth that dwells within him, right? And so it's the truth itself. It's the intensity of the truth that emanates from the Father is the highest intensity, highest fidelity of the truth that exists in any one being. And so that's why we commend him and we seek to be like him, because he's the wisest teacher we have. And Jesus is the second, you know. That's a whole different discussion if you want to get into Heavenly Mother and if she's been ever present through this process. I think it's possible. But yeah, it's a total shift of perspective where it's like, all right, we all need to become prophets. We all need to become seers. We all need to become revelators, priests, and kings and queens. Like that's what the mission statement for a Mormon is supposed to be. And we're kind of just getting our temple recommend and, you know, eating our Chick-fil-A and all that other stuff and saying we're good for the celestial kingdom whenever you had probably P. Pratt storming through blizzards barefoot and stuff and cross continent spreading this stuff. And there was no stopping that guy. He was a giant. He was a superhuman. And I think he's one of the most brilliant theologians that the Christian world has ever produced, but no one pays attention to him because he was Mormon. You know, he's up there with Emerson and everyone else in terms of the critiques. They call him the Apostle Paul of Mormonism. I don't know if you ever heard that, but yeah, they call probably P. Pratt the Apostle Paul of Mormonism because of how he interpreted what Joseph Smith
thought. How much missionary work he did.
This is a pretty awesome quote from him. What's that?
Probably because of how much missionary work he did.
What'd you say?
He's known as Paul because he's compared to Paul because of how much missionary work he did, and Paul was all about traveling everywhere to preach the gospel. Probably. I don't know. That's my guess why they call him the Mormon Paul.
From what I understood, it was because of his lens that he put onto the Mormon theological perspective, kind of like how Christ came and then Paul kind of added his specifications on how the mechanics of everything found in the four Gospels works. That's what I understand that why they call him, but I mean, it could very well be because he was a freaking maniac when it came to selling the gospel and everything. But yeah, this is one of my favorite quotes from him right here. And this is really some of the best advice you can get from one of our early church apostles. He's like, man, know thyself, study thine own nature, learn thy powers of body. There you go. Encouraging the powers of the body, thy capacity of mind, and learn thy origin, thy purpose and destiny. Study the true source of thine own happiness and the happiness of all beings with which thou art associated with. Learn to act in unison with thy true character. There you go, the true self, the true character, the self that was pre-existent before we came into mortality, the confident, knowledgeable self when the veil of forgetfulness is removed. It's the unconditioned self. It's like whenever you're a baby, you were talking about the fall from grace. When you're a baby, there's no separation between subject and object. It's just an oceanic effect. And so that's what Buddhism is trying to accomplish, is kind of having the barriers between self and other be united again. And I mean, atonement is literally at-one-ment. So you kind of come into that oneness that was there before you were born, before culture indoctrinated you into having an ego, a selfish ego and stuff. But anyways, and thus improve and cultivate resources within and around thee. This will render you truly happy and be an acceptable service to your God. So learn the powers of your body, learn the powers of your mind, learn thy origin, find out your destiny, and cultivate the resources within and around thee, and you'll be truly happy. And that's pretty straightforward. And that's what we should be doing with all elements in our life, our agriculture, our architecture, our artwork in general. Like, we're called to be Brigham Young literally called us to be co-creators with God. And so I have a big passion. I think it's pretty cool that Mormons actually believe the earth has a spirit. I don't know if you were aware of that. It's not really talked about.
Yeah,
like, Mormons are pretty much
You're freaking speaks in the book of Moses, so the earth speaks in the book of Moses,
yeah,
like
exactly.
Well, the mother of men, or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely like an equally feminine spirit to the earth.
Yeah, and so I think that's really interesting to take into consideration, because in like Egyptian theology, like God had a spouse, it was female, and she was like enveloped all of creation. She was the fabric of reality. She was the matrix, and matrix literally means womb. And so that kind of like, the celestial marriage is a thing. So once you achieve that degree of understanding and parental love yourself, maybe another simulation pops into existence. The female is the fabric of reality, aka the mind of God, aka the Holy Spirit, as described in the lectures on faith. Just conjecture, no talking on doctrine, but maybe she is the microcosm of this home that contains the entirety of the universe and all intelligent matter. A microcosm of that female is the earth itself. And so the earth itself is seeking to, I believe in evolution personally. I think that fits perfectly with our doctrine of eternal progression and everything. So the earth is trying to become sentient. And we hear revelations of the Doctrine and Covenants.
Evolve into further stages without it.
Further stages of sentience, and it wouldn't be able to achieve celestialization if it didn't have the logos that's within all of us, and to properly cultivate it's to make the Garden of Eden again, and that perfect balance between nature and culture. Because that's once all the souls that have been on earth are exalted, then the earth's mission will be done and it will be celestialized. And I think the Doctrine and Covenants say it will be a Urim and Thummim in the heavens, and it will be pretty much a window into eternity. And so the earth has continuously been trying to cultivate celestial individuals, and it's been struggling because of the state of our world. I think the earth is actually probably worse off than most of the other earths in the universe. I think we messed up big time on this planet because of the fall of Adam. I think the fall is required so that men might have joy. But I think on most planets, when they fall in accordance with God's command, so they fall at the right time. But I think here on our planet, we fell before God told us to fall. And I think that's put us at an extraordinary disadvantage. And so here's a question I have for you. Did Christ's atonement atone for the whole universe or just this planet?
I mean, there is that one, I can't remember who said it, but there's that one like deep doctrine where they're like, the reason why Christ came to this earth is because we were the worst off. We had the most wicked people and all that. We had freaking Nero, we had freaking Hitler, we had freaking Stalin. We just had the worst of the worst. And so, he came to redeem, he came to us because, like, as the Book of Mormon says, we were the only ones who were wicked enough to crucify our own God. Or the Jews, I guess, specifically at that time, were the only ones wicked enough to crucify their own God. Because everywhere else, we would have just accepted him and been like, yay, Jesus, you're awesome. And so there's that deep doctrine that says he came to this earth because, yeah, we're the worst off. But, yeah, he atoned for the whole universe, all of creation. So, yeah, that's what I believe.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think if that is the case, that he came to our planet specifically because we were at the bottom of the totem pole for fallen worlds. We were the most fallen. Maybe that's what it means that he descended below all things and ascended on high above all things. Maybe that's why he had to have an incarnation on our planet specifically.
it goes back to that Hermetic principle of as above, so below.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something because of we are a materialistic religion. We say all is material. And so when it comes to our glands and everything, when it comes to spiritual experience, like our pineal gland and all these other glands, pituitary gland, like we need to take care of our body. Otherwise, our receivers will not be able to tune correctly to receive the spiritual frequencies slash energy slash fire that seems to be requisite for you to be a son of God. Um, and so I think that's really important because most of Christianity just denies the body. And where Mormonism goes even further, it's like, no, the soul is literally the body and the spirit together in one. And so there's a strong emphasis that, yes, we should beautify this body to its maximum. I mean, partly Pratt was like, you should learn the powers of your body. And that means you have to exercise the powers of your body. And he was a great example of that. This guy was like a marathon runner.
I think one of the biggest problems I have with the modern for the strength of youth is it's like it talks about how you should eat healthy and all that, but it doesn't mention exercise. I think we need to be exercising our physical bodies, because if we don't feel physically well, our spirits suffer as well. So we should be exercising as well as
if your temple is polluted, the spirit won't be able to dwell there as easily, for sure. And there's a lot of things. I mean, if you look at the studies, it's like an hour a day of exercise.
Mm-hmm. It's that specific link between body and spirit is why the body is so necessary, because if your body is suffering, then the spirit suffers too. And that's the number one thing that I think Protestants misunderstand, where they think that God is without a body, but when you're without a body, you can't really cultivate your spirit. It's the body that gives you eyes to see and fingers to feel things, and a nose to smell things, and muscles to work and to feel pain and to feel the joy of your labor. That's what really enlightens the spirit, is having a body to begin with. And so I think specifically God can feel pain. Because like we talk about how in the book of Moses, he is capable of crying real tears. You can't do that without a body.
Yeah, Mormonism has a God that weeps. That was another thing that caught me off guard, is instead of a tyrannical God that was saying be good because I told you so, it's just like, man, maybe I shouldn't have set these guys on this game. I know how hard it was for myself. I know how hard it will be for my son. I feel, I mourn because of, how difficult this will be for my children. But ultimately, I know they will have joy in the end and all will be well. And so that was definitely a different, it's the more of the prodigal son kind of perspective of God versus the brimstone and hellfire that you hear before. But I think there's a revival that's happening because of the internet and voices like you going out there and everything. Kwaku, some other ones that are introducing.
We're trying to make Mormonism cool again.
Yeah, for sure, because we have a bunch of old guys that are very kind-hearted, but
they're very stuck in.
They don't have the vitality we were talking about. They don't have the vitality we were talking about before, and they all seem to be lawyers or businessmen. And I think we need to change that up. We need to get some farmers. We need to get some. I don't know.
People
we need to get some crazy folks in there again. Yeah. We need to get some Joseph Smith in there again, and I think they're being produced because of the amount of information that is coming out. It's making people have to question their axioms, where before they could just be comfortably numb to it all and ignore it, where now it's coming into their face. Every missionary that goes out has to freaking watch the cartoon, the banned Mormon cartoon, whatever it's called.
Yeah, the banned Mormon cartoon, or they're getting pummeled with like John Dehlin stuff or all these, anti-Mormon stuff. And they're starting to, what's interesting is how John Dehlin recently put out a video talking about how, oh, I was offended because of all of these things, and I'm like, maybe you should have been offended because yeah, there's some hard truths that go along with the church that can be offensive, and I get that, but it's about seeing those things and being strong enough to look at also all the awesome stuff that the church does as well, about being able to push through it all. And so I'm grateful that there are things within the church that can offend people, because it gives us the opportunity to be strong enough to also see the good in it.
Yeah.
And to really, like, it makes us self-conscious. It makes us think, oh, it does the fall from paradise thing again, where you feel like you've fallen. You go through this, this swamp of doubt, but in your doubts, you start to pick up little pieces again, and suddenly, next thing you know, your testimony is stronger than it ever has been.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without that getting offended period.
Oh yeah. No, and there's a lot of, it's good to an extent. I think there are good answers for all this stuff, but I think there is some work that could be had when it comes to our leadership. I don't know, in terms of the way they deal with things sometimes is kind of weird, like calling people lazy learners sometimes and all these other things where it's like, that doesn't help. But kind of
they need to get into the what's going on the internet. What are people talking about? And so I think it was really cool how one of the apostles, was it Oaks or something, who brought up, like, he got this letter from a little girl who was like, oh, I'm living in this crazy LGBTQ plus world and it's so confusing. And he's like, oh, I'm actually going to sit down and I'm going to talk about this, right there in conference. And I think that's really cool. So, and Oaks again, he's so willing to just be so blunt about things that are going on right now. And so that's why I want him to be the next prophet, because he doesn't care what you think. He's just going to sit there. He's going to tell you what he's observed, what the truth is, and how we should proceed. And so that would be awesome if he was the next prophet.
I think there is a based element to Oaks for sure, but I think he may push a lot of the fence sitters. It's going to push the fence sitters one way or the other. And so all the people that are on the in-between, they're going to get off on one side or the other. And I think that could be a good thing. It's a good sifting thing. Yeah, no, there's a lot of problems that Mormons are having to overcome. They've always been the blunt of the joke and everything. But now we're kind of getting an internet presence. I'm on a lot of the old, like, Catholic trad accounts on Instagram and Orthodoxy, and we keep coming up into the conversation for some reason. They hate us because they ain't us, I guess. But
they're
jealous. I think they are jealous because we're happy. We have a community. We have a theology that makes sense, even though they try and describe it. And we're like, no, that's not what we believe at all. And our numbers are growing. They are growing, but they would be growing faster if we had a little bit more liberality in our techniques. Like, instead of making everything cookie cutter and everything, if we could
being a little bit more experimental, like it was back in the day.
Make it more community driven, a little bit more top or bottom up and less top down. We're kind of at the point where we don't have to worry about being bankrupt and we have to take authoritarian control of a lot of things. And so I think we could, like, let everybody decorate their churches with local artists and all these other things. And that would help, catalyze that love and everything, because you could literally, oh, I got on the church wall, I got approved or whatever. I think that'd be kind of neat. There's a lot of concepts like this that are very simple to apply. And so we're just kind of waiting for that leader that's, like, changes things up so much, kind of like McKay did back in the day. We kind of need another McKay. Like, he changes it up so much, but it's still the same. It's still retained its essence. And I don't know, Oaks may do that. He may surprise us. He may have a whole bunch of ideas that he's been brewing up for a long time, and he'll just release them all whenever he gets in.
Nelson's definitely been making a lot of changes. I mean, he reduced church from 3 hours to 2, so that was a pretty major change. And
Yeah.
so I think every prophet has been making subtle changes here and there. Like Thomas S. Monson was famous for lowering the missionary age and all that, but we do need like a prophet who really just gets in and changes so many crazy things, that not like we're doing a complete overhaul of the whole church, but that we're bringing things back to the experimental roots, where we feel more liberal, more at ease to experiment, because that's how we move forward. If we're not allowed to evolve, we're just gonna go the way of the dodo, as it were, I guess. And so we need to be able to evolve. We need to be able to evaluate our values. We need to rise above. I mean, I would kind of go with Nietzsche, where it's sort of like we need to completely overhaul the idea of morality to something a lot more higher, something a lot more greater. So we're not just being moral, we're actually just we're going out and doing something for a reason, instead of just being moral for moral sakes.
Yeah, and I think that, like when you're talking about like revolting against everything that you've been told up until this moment, and you just trying to discover the truth for yourself, that's the whole basis of like meditation. I mean, in Lectures on Faith, it said, let it be recorded that any faith that does not require the sacrifice of all things does not have the power unto salvation. And so that's like a very Buddhist thing. It's like relinquish all the world, to say, and then you'll be saved. Once you cast off the natural man and don't identify with it as being you, you are the I am presence, the I am that I am. Once you come back to that Adamic state where you alone exist on the world, and there's what Adam came in and he had no religion. He had no set expectations, but slowly and surely he experimented and he found out what caused pain and what caused pleasure and what caused enduring joy and what caused enduring pain and suffering. And once we're all trying to rediscover who we were before we were born, because it's our source. It's the light itself. It's the light that enlighteneth our eyes, as the Doctrine and Covenants says. And so you read stuff like this, and it's like, so you're telling me that consciousness is pretty much the basis of reality. You can't. A light would not be bright if you didn't have an eye to see the light. Pink would not exist unless you had a human mind. Like, you get into all these topics, and so it's like. So yeah, for there to be something, there had to be something always. There always had to be at least one conscious being. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, nothing could have happened if there was no consciousness present.
Well, I think it requires two, because as the scriptures say, it's not good for man to be alone. Adam needed Eve to wake him up, because it was her job to eat the fruit and then persuade Adam to eat with her. And so it was sort of like when boy meets girl, that's what awakens in him the need to be responsible, the need to go out and work and labor and make sure that he's taking care of his wife and the children that she's going to bear and all that. All the pain that
absolutely
is what awakes the man to responsibility.
Yeah,
and so that's
duty
for me. That's
and
the story of
all these.
Yeah,
and we're told that we're all Adam and Eve, right? From the LDS perspective, we should all imagine ourselves as each being an Adam and an Eve. And there's even some theories that Jesus was Adam in one of his probations and all these other things. And so we can get into that topic if you want, because whenever you get into the intelligent matter, if all matter is intelligent to certain degrees or others, then it would make sense that this matter, if there's no hell in Mormonism, there's just eternal punishment, and eternal is his name, therefore it is his punishment. That very well may be, if you're unwilling to repent to the last degree, then instead of eternal torment, it may just be eternal punishment, which is recycling back through the mill again. And maybe you could get thrown back onto the potter's wheel and see if you could get it on another go around. this persona that was developed and has been trying to be refined is defected. All right, we tried to the last second to try and get him to repent, and then so that material is broken down to its base units again and put through again. And so that's where you get and there's a quote, I wish I could pull it up right now, and it says that is the proper interpretation of, I forget what book in the Bible, or there's a chapter and it talks about the clay on the potter's wheel is marred by if it's marred by the hand, then it's cast off the wheel again. And pretty much he's saying if one doesn't abide by the laws of the universe, he will be broken back down. And I think that's a far more just and putting out of the fire of the soul is far more just than locking them in the basement and torturing them forever. And so that's one perspective I have on multiple mortal probations. I'm not definitive on it. I've heard theories that Joseph Smith was Mormon in a previous life. And you get into some crazy theories like that. And they say, well, there's no way you could experience all of the experiences you needed to have to become a god in one lifetime. So that's why you have to come back in other lifetimes. And that explains why certain individuals have higher intellectual capacities, higher physical capacities, higher any capacities, is they're more refined. Then they've been here more times than, let's say, a fresh soul that popped up. It's like, oh, you're fresh off the boat. So like Joseph Smith, he's probably, there's even claims that he was an archangel in in the
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. And so you get into these topics and it's just, of course, it's non-essential when it comes to your salvation and everything, but there's a lot of cool stuff that can be talked about with people that are really searching and wanting to contemplate these very big concepts of mortality and stuff. And Mormonism, I mean, shoot, if I walked up to someone as a missionary right now and I said, do you know some Mormons believe that Cain is Bigfoot? Like that alone, it's just
I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one at all.
You don't believe that one?
No, because like Book of Jasher talks about how Cain died, so I don't think Cain is Bigfoot. I think that's just a silly myth that's going around. Yeah. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, but it's funny that it's even there.
I definitely feel like there's so many, interesting things you could talk about, whether or not Joseph Smith was an archangel, whether or not Bigfoot is Cain. But I definitely tend to want to stick to whatever benefits me in the moment, whatever helps me on my eternal progression, or whatever helps you on your eternal progression. That it's like, oh, Cain's Bigfoot. Yay. That's kind of how I feel. If Cain turns out to be Bigfoot, I was like, oh, I don't know if I need to know that, but all right.
Yeah, no, it's not important, but it's fascinating for you to hear the folklore, because they are their own people. They're a peculiar people, the Latter-day Saints. But there are people that anybody can be adopted into.
We should be proud to be peculiar. I don't want to be like the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I want to be weird. That weird guy, that weird guy who's coming up with weird philosophical theories, and it's like, what the heck is that guy talking about? I want to be that guy.
Yeah, no, and I think we need more of those guys out there, because there's a lot of quasi-autistic people like you and I that find this stuff really fascinating, and
wouldn't call myself full-on autistic, but I definitely got some of those autistic qualities going on.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking. I'm just doing the whole TikTok thing where everyone's autistic these days, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
We
I don't have TikTok.
Yeah, we hyper-focus on topics that no one else would be hyper-focused on. But instead of baseball facts, it's, Joseph Smith early quotes or whatever. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, no, I like Mormonism a lot. I love Mormonism. I think it's an integrative theology. I think we're told in our scriptures that we should be able to accept truth no matter where it comes from, and all truth will be rolled into one in the end of the days. And we're Gnostics. We should be coming up and embracing other scriptures. I think that would be a huge thing if Oakes got into office and into the presidency, and he said, we're going to say maybe on the Gospel of Thomas, like that parts of Gospel of Thomas may be inspired. I encourage you to read it. Like that would be groundbreaking. Even if they didn't adopt it into the canon, so many people like the Gospel of Thomas. If people that aren't even Christian, they say like, yeah, this is good knowledge. But if we were to be like the first major church that was like, yeah, we believe there's some validity to the Gospel of Thomas, like that'd be explosive, because then that would open us up to exploring all the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like Gospel of Thomas is one of the more legitimate ones with evidence, a little bit stronger argument for its validity.
Oh, it's also one of the crazy ones.
We would encourage. It's not one of the more crazy ones, no. It's just a bunch of like almost Zen koans, how they describe the sayings of Jesus and stuff. But it goes back to, where is your source? It's like, my source is where light began and all this other stuff. And so it gets back to this whole light of Christ and that which enlighteneth your eye. And my Father, I come from my Father who is the source of this light, and all these other things. And it seems the Book of Mormon said that we were going to get scriptures that come from out from the earth and testify of Jesus Christ. And we got some a couple decades later, and we're just like,
right. Well, it talks about how all nations, it's how God speaks to all nations the way that they can understand it. And, they all write down their own scriptures, and he visits all of them. And he talks about in the Book of Mormon, I got to leave you to go visit other people on other parts of the world, kind of an idea. And, and then there's that whole passage of scripture that's like, a Bible, we have a Bible, we need no more Bible, thou fools, because he speaks to all the nations. So I kind of feel like in this day and age, a lot of people, even inside the church, are like, a gospel library app. I have the gospel library app, and I don't need any more knowledge, And I wonder if what if we made the gospel library app not just whatever's been said inside the church? What if we also included things that come from outside the church, that the authorities are like, yeah, this is some good stuff, let's just put it in?
Yeah, no, I think that would be revolutionary, because that's what we need in the future. Is we need a theological lens that could say, yeah, Muhammad might have been a minor prophet. Yeah, the Buddha might have been a minor prophet. These teachers that brought good tidings that you guys are so appreciative of, they're prophets to varying degrees. And I think that would, you're always careful about interfaith dialogues, because you're afraid that your truth will be diluted if you're just too open, kind of like the Community of Christ. I have some experience with them, and they don't even know what they believe anymore. It's just a big hot mess. You don't even have to believe Jesus is real for you to be in there. You could believe that Jesus is evil and still be in there. It's like there's no standard for membership anymore, and they're just kind of floating. But anyways, you don't want that to happen with the LDS church, but at the same time, you want them to be flexible enough where you don't have all the membership leave. I'm not saying that's happening. We're actually retaining members better than most other religions, because I think we're taking a hard stand when it comes to certain issues. But
we need to.
Yeah, I think it would be cool to shift things up and to get some intellectual juices going again. And the internet's enabling that. And I think if the leadership, instead of getting real specific, was just we like what you're doing somehow, or we encourage you to read the Apocrypha, or to prayerfully consider the Shepherd of Hermas. Anything like that would really open the gate to, because Gnostics, they had an open canon too. They had all kinds of crazy books, like you said. And who knows if they said they were the literal word of God, but they had them in their library and they thought they were interesting, and they observed and saw what they could gather from them. And I think we're told we should read the best books. We should search out the best books throughout the world. And so you're reading Nietzsche, we're reading Jung.
Right. I mean, I got right here. I got the Spoke Zarathustra. Yeah. I have the Quran. I haven't read this yet, but I'm sure there's some good stuff in that too. But so I kind of think that Nietzsche in a way was a bit of a prophet. I think Carl Jung was a bit of a prophet. I think anybody that tells the truth is a prophet. So they're probably minor prophets, but ultimately I think we should be considering some of the stuff they talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think what I read a quote. It says, prophets exalt ideals while philosophers organize ideas. And so that's the difference between a prophet and a philosopher.
I like that.
One that exalts ideals. And so Joseph Smith was the embodiment of exalting ideals to the maximum, to no, it's our job to make heaven on earth. If we don't make Zion, this whole religion thing's pointless. That was the type of, we got to do this, or we're just freaking being morons otherwise. And that's what we need. We need that sort of attitude that gumption to say, yeah, we're really going to try and make these literal communities of people, because that's what he was doing. He was actually trying to make cityscapes with architecture, with planning and zoning, with trees, temples, X amount of blocks and everything. It's like that was actual, like, it wasn't just I'm sitting in my corner and reading my scriptures and feel good feelings. It was like, all right, I've had truth revealed to me. Now I got to act. We can't sit on our hands, like the Book of Mormon teaches us. We can't sit on our hands, and this stuff will be done. And so I think that's the awesome thing because of the foundation Joseph Smith handed us. And it seems really that he solved a lot of the issues. He diagnosed a lot of the issues before Nietzsche was even on the planet.
Right. Nietzsche was born the same year that Joseph Smith died. So I think that's an interesting
No way.
idea. Yeah. Huh. So I mean, I brought that up in my Will to Power video. So I think that's a cool idea.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe, have you ever heard of the Baha'i faith?
No, what is that?
So the Baha'i faith is pretty much Islam's version of Mormonism. And so what's his name from The Office, the real serious guy that everyone messes with in The Office? What's the actor's name? He wears the glasses.
Dwight? You're talking about Dwight?
Yeah, the guy who plays Dwight, he was raised Baha'i. And so they believe in continuous revelation. They believe Jesus was a prophet, but they believe Buddha was a prophet. They believe Krishna was a prophet. Well, they had a guy called Baha'u'llah, who they claimed to be their prophet. And he was the greatest prophet out of all of them. So anyways, they're very inclusive. We include all truth and everything. But Baha'u'llah was born the year that Joseph Smith died. And so it was interesting. I met a guy, he said, yeah, God placed Joseph Smith to restore original Christianity, and God sent Baha'u'llah to restore original Islam. And so I thought that was an interesting idea. But it's weird how these dates seem to be coalescing towards pivotal points. Maybe they're meridians in time or something. I don't know.
I mean, you never know. Maybe Joseph Smith got reincarnated as Nietzsche. But in any case, so let's start to wrap this up. You want to give any kind of closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. No, I've kind of been all over the place. I appreciate everyone listening. Partly P. Pratt.
We mainly had Jacob and Christopher chatting in, but I think they've left by now. But they can rewatch this later. So yeah, go ahead. Everybody else.
Yeah, no. Overall, guys, read as much as you can. Study as many religions as you can. Seek out truth, no matter its source, and just use an eye of faith. Use the eye of the Spirit, like Joseph Smith taught us to do with the Apocrypha and everything. With whatever you're reading, read Nietzsche, but with the eye of the Spirit. Read Jung, but with the eye of the Spirit, and see how it correlates with everything. And read Parley P. Pratt's work. He should be further up there. He should be in every gospel. I think he should be in the Gospel Library app. Personally, I think we should try and do all those. Like, it'd even be cool to have the Nauvoo Times and Seasons in the Gospel Library app. It's like we have all these in the Joseph Smith papers. But anyways, just study, keep learning, keep persevering, keep growing stronger, and that's all I got to say. Have faith in Jesus, love everyone, see each one of us as brothers and sisters, and keep shooting for the ideal.
All right, cool. All right, thanks, Chaz. For anybody who's coming back to watch this, you can check him out on Instagram at Cosmic Gnostic Mormon. Anywhere else you think people can check you out, or is that mainly it?
I plan on doing a YouTube channel a little bit more structured than this, for sure. Kind of write out my ideas and everything. I had all kinds of notes that I was supposed to reference, but every time I go to my Google Docs, it slows down my internet enough where it'll make an issue on here. So yeah, maybe we could do this another time. We could kind of get some ideas, and pictures and diagrams and all that other stuff.
I was thinking it could be interesting if you wanted to send me a video essay script, and I could turn it into a video essay for you, or you can save it for your own channel or whatever you want. That'd
be really cool. Actually, I have a couple.
You have
a couple church talks that you could do already. Yeah, like that. I think you might enjoy. But yeah, man, it was a pleasure getting to talk to you. We only had brief discussions on Facebook, like a couple messages back and forth, and we jumped right into this. So it was really nice getting to hear how your brain works. And yeah, I
Hey,
appreciate
you
it.
too, man.
All right,
Thanks
catch
a
you later.
lot. All right,
Yeah,
see you,
thank you.
man.